Hello, everyone. I'm Saundra Neperud. As she said, I'm from the Grief app. And the Grief app got started because 2.5 years ago, when my husband passed away from colon cancer, there were absolutely no bereavement services available to me. I lived in the second biggest city in Washington, Spokane, Washington, and there was absolutely nothing available to me. Hospice didn't follow up. They also didn't follow up with my mother's passing. The counselor that I had that my insurance paid for had no bereavement experience. And so every time I saw her, it felt like she was kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what stuck. And I discovered afterwards that this is actually really common. It turns out that grief and bereavement are not required topics when you're getting your counseling certificate. And so a lot of counselors have no experience with grief. I tried to go to grief groups, but the only ones alive and in person were religious ones, and I wasn't comfortable with that concept. I ended up going to Facebook to see what was on Facebook. And for widows and widowers, what was available was very often almost like a dating experience where people were hooking up on the app. And that I was not ready for. Some other ones, it almost felt like a race to the bottom to see who could prove that they missed their spouse the most. So I wasn't getting a lot from that. I finally found a local group of widowers, but they were kind of inactive. And so I actually had to take on the role of moderator and lead activities and moderate the group chat to be able to have anything at all available for me for processing the loss of my husband, which if you haven't experienced it, your whole life kind of blows up when your spouse dies. So a year after his death, somebody showed me an app that they were using to stop drinking. And I was playing around with that app going, well, there's some similarities here. If you're to take this and modify it, it could potentially work for grief. So I spent the next 3 months learning what apps can and can't do, talking to hospice and palliative care and funeral directors to figure out if something could be developed for an app that would help with grief. And that's how the grief app came to be. Now, having said that, I'm not a counselor. So if you guys want to ask any questions that a counselor would answer for you, it's not going to be me. I have 2 grief counselors on my team. Unfortunately, they couldn't join me tonight. But just know that the information I'm giving you is from my own experience going through grief and from all of the research that I did after my husband's death. So that's kind of what this talk is based upon. And I learned a lot about grief. In America, we really don't talk about it very much. So when you're in the middle of it, it is all new. You don't know what's happening. You don't understand what you're going through. Both my mother and my mother-in-law were widowed while I was an adult, and yet we never really talked about it. And so when I myself was widowed, I was pretty unprepared for what I was going through. So hopefully this talk will give you guys some basis for what's happening. You don't have to have the grief app to do this talk. All of these exercises you can do on your own without the app. But if you want to download the app, you can do it. We've given you the promo code Home Funeral 2026, and that will give you an entire month for free if you enter that into the paywall section. Otherwise, just follow along and I'll give you guys some tips, some knowledge, and some background on grief. So the first thing is, what is grief? And in America, we often think that it is a sadness, like severe sadness, but actually grief is a whole bunch of things. It is a swirl of emotions. You can feel anger. I was very angry at my husband. You can feel, and the anger comes because you lost something that you wanted. You lost it against your will. It was taken from you and you couldn't stop it. So you get angry. You have fear or anxiety because you couldn't stop that bad thing from happening. So maybe you can't stop the next bad thing from happening. So what else is going to come at you that you can't stop? You can have disorientation because suddenly the person that loaded the dishwasher or took the kids to school or was your sounding board at home is gone. And you keep assuming that they're going to be there and you do your normal stuff and it's not there. That other person isn't there. And so life just functions differently than it used to. So that is just disorienting. Sometimes you can feel relief, especially if they were sick for a very long time, if they were in pain, if you as the caregiver for a very long time had lost so much of your freedom, of your time, of your energy, of your emotions, if you'd given it all and you were just barely making it, you can have the sense of relief. And relief comes with a sense of guilt. There is so much guilt because we are all just humans. All of us could have done something better. We could have done something different. We could have done something else. And so there is always some form of guilt that comes along with it. So you've got all of these emotions swirling around in your head. But at the same time, you have physical reactions as well. And you've got numbness. Numbness is like nature's shock absorber. It keeps you from having all of those feelings and all of those realities all at once. It kind of numbs you and feeds you them little bit by little bit by little bit. So you're going through life and your brain and everything's just not quite working right. You have brain fog because there is so much that you're dealing with. All of these emotions, all of these changes, they're taking up all of your mental capacity. And so other things like getting the kids to school and going to work become really hard because your brain is constantly working on all these other things. And so you have this brain fog that makes it really hard to function. And you also have exhaustion because when you have a death, your fight or flight reaction is triggered. And so your body is surging with all of these stress hormones to deal with this big thing that's just happened to you. And those stress hormones wear out your body. So not only do you have all of these emotional things going on, but you have all these physical things going on as well. So grief is really complex. It's not the simple thing that we're kind of used to thinking of it as. And grief is not linear. The whole idea of the 5 stages of grief is it's been debunked so many times. Even the Kubler-Ross Foundation, where Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is the person that kind of initially introduced that, has debunked it. There are no 5 stages of grief. It's not an orderly progression. Grief comes and it goes in all sorts of different directions all at once. You're not going to go through it in any sort of an orderly fashion. The other kind of misnomer we have in America is that grief lasts a year, and it doesn't. Grief can hit you immediately and intensely. It can hit you later on. It can take a year. It can take 2 years. In fact, the biggest time that people seek grief counseling is 5 years after their loss. 5 years. So this really shows that it's not a 1-year process. And the second biggest time that people seek grief counseling is 1 year after their loss. Again, we have this idea that grief lasts a year, and you get to that year and you're still struggling. And so people will seek assistance then. So it's not orderly, it's not predictable, it is different in every person, and it's affected by a lot of factors. It's affected by what other losses you've had in your life. Parents, pets, moving away, losing friends. It's affected by how you've dealt with them. It's affected by how your culture sees loss or death. It's affected by how intertwined the thing that you lost was in your daily life. Was it something that was in your life, someone or something in your life all the time, where there were all these holes that you're missing, or were they just there twice a year? All of these things can affect you. 2 people can have the exact same loss. 2 siblings can lose a parent and react extremely differently to it. Or you yourself can have 2 different losses. If you can lose your father and your mother and react very differently to both of them. So it doesn't help to have any sorts of shoulds or should nots or timelines. Grief is unpredictable. It's different for every person. And it is just, the person in grief is the person that knows the most about how they are feeling at the moment. Our app is kind of divided into 2 sections, and there are kind of 2 different ways of looking at grief. There's grief and there's mourning, and we use those words interchangeably, but they actually mean 2 different things. So grief is that swirl of emotions I was talking about, all those different feelings that you have. That's the grief part of it. The mourning part of it is actually making sense of it, integrating the loss into your life, adapting to your new reality. So those are 2 very different things, and you need to do both. You need to both grieve and mourn. And it's going to take as much time as it's going to take, but there are steps that you can take to help it along. So a lot of what the app is based on is cognitive behavioral therapy. And essentially, cognitive behavioral therapy is a cycle. It's your actions and your emotions and your what you're thinking, your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions kind of interplaying on each other. And so what the app does is we're trying to kind of break that cycle by giving you very small actions that you can do that will change how that cycle is going. And that's a lot of what the app is based on. So the first thing that the app has, and here it is in case you guys want to see it, is the grief wave. And essentially, the grief wave is there because in America, we are really bad at feeling our emotions. And so the whole idea with the grief wave is that for while it's going, and you can set it for as little as 1 minute, but for while that timer is going, your goal is to sit and just allow yourself to feel all of those emotions. Your heart needs to sort them out. They're all coming at you all at once, and your heart needs that time to kind of sort through all of those different emotions. So every time you get that overwhelming sense, almost like you're being hit by a wave, you smell something, you see something, you hear something, and suddenly you're being hit by that feeling of grief. The whole goal during that time is just to sit and allow yourself to feel those emotions. 1 minute was done because you can do anything for 1 minute. You can allow yourself to feel your emotions for 1 minute. The goal is to work your way up 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you can do this just with a kitchen timer. It doesn't have to be the app. But the goal is to work your way up until you make it through the cycle, because the grief wave is going to naturally ebb and flow, just like a wave on the ocean. So while it's strong, while it's intense, allow yourself to just feel whatever emotion is there, knowing that it is going to ebb, it is going to work its way down. But while it's there, your goal is to feel your emotions. And one of the things I used to do that I found really helpful right after a grief wave hit was what I call grief wave breathing. And this came from a quote that I heard early on, which was the fact that grief is love with nowhere to go. And I really love that saying. It is love. That's what grief is. You loved whatever it is that you lost. So what I would do is when I would be hit by that grief wave, once it had passed, once it had ebbed, I would then try to think through, take a really deep breath and think through what was the love that was in that memory. And I would try to hold on to the part of that memory that was the love. And then I would really loudly blow out and try to blow out the pain. So I'd go, do that 1 or 2 times. Every time, what was the love you were feeling? Breathe in, blow out the pain. And what I discovered would happen after doing this for a while is when that grief wave would hit me again and I could feel it coming, instead of being scared of it, I would think, okay, here comes the love. Like, there is love that is going to hit me, and I would look for that love right away. And it makes the grief waves so much easier because it is love. And to have that mindset that this is love that's coming at you instead of pain that's coming at you makes the grief waves a lot easier to handle. Once the grief wave is gone, there's a couple of different things that you can try. And the book and the app itself will take you to them. But again, you don't have to have the app to do these. And one of the things that we have here is audio journaling. And the whole thing is that you can start it and just talk for up to 15 minutes. And what's happening with journaling is the mourning part of it. So you went through the grief wave. That was the grief part of it. Now you're into the mourning part of it. And the mourning part is the sense making. So you kind of have your heart, your soul, and your mind all involved in grief. And your mind gets that they're dead, right? You saw the body. You were told by the doctor. You had something presented to you that, yes, you agree the person is dead. But your mind is only 1/3 of who you are. Your heart is all of those emotions that you're going to feel. And then your soul is kind of your essence, your being. I don't even know really the right word for it, but even though in your mind you know they're dead, it can be hard to accept it. You can really fight it. You can refuse to change anything. Like I know someone that kept their spouse's toothbrush around 7 years after they died, because making that change, throwing away that toothbrush, means truly admitting that they're dead. It means really accepting the fact that they have died. And it feels almost like you're killing them a second time. And so you're fighting it. One of the other things you can do is you can keep doing the if only I'd called the doctor sooner. If only we hadn't taken that road trip. If only we'd noticed the pain earlier. And that is your brain trying to relive the past to change the future, right? Maybe if you keep if only in it enough times, you'll find that one thing that will change it, that will make it so that that loss no longer happened. And so all of these things are your soul kind of fighting the reality of what is. And so journaling and the other things of mourning, the whole concept of them is to get your soul to come to terms with your loss and with your new reality. And so journaling, whether you're writing it or you're speaking it, it takes all of those emotions that have been swirling around in your brain and it forces you to put them into words. And by putting them into words, you're starting to make sense. You've got to make some sort of sense. You can't speak random emotions. You have to speak in sentences. And so little by little, that helps you start to process the loss. And so that's the whole idea of the journaling, is get what you're feeling into words. Also, if you don't want to journal, speak to people about it. Not if you're not in the mood for it. Nobody should ever force you to speak about your loss if you're not willing to do so. But if you're in a position where you feel like you can talk about it, talk about it. Because again, putting what you're going through, what happened, into words forces you to start to make sense of it. And it's part of the mourning process. So journal, writing it in an actual journal, or speaking it into an audio journal, or speaking it to a friend. Those are all very important things to do for your brain. The other thing you really need to do is you need to tell the story of the person that you lost. You need to tell the good things and the bad things, because again, this helps you integrate that loss into your new reality. When I first started doing it, I would do it on Facebook and didn't always get the results that I wanted, because people would do sympathy posts. Oh, we're so sorry. And I wasn't necessarily looking for sympathy. I was trying to record my husband's life, like the fun stories, the interesting stories. I was trying to get it out there. And so we did make that part of the app as well. Again, you don't have to have the app. You can do it however you want. But we did it where in the app you could upload photos. And these are not mine. This is one of my staff members. She lost her son, and these are some of his photos. So it's the stories and the pictures of the one you lost, but you need to tell that story, whether it's in person, whether it's on the app, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's however you want to do it. You need to start to tell the story of their life, because again, it helps you think through and integrate that loss. The other thing that we have on the app, and you can get this through books. I actually ended up buying a lot of books because there weren't any other resources for me to use. But you need to understand grief. You need to understand what's happening to you, because you really don't expect it and you don't think what's happening is normal. But also by doing it, it helps you again integrate the loss by going through workbook activities. And this is what ours looks like. It's pretty simple. These are all the different emotions that you can go through. This is the if only one. It has a little bit of background, and then it has some questions that you need to answer. And the whole point of this is the questions that you need to answer, because by answering these questions, you're again thinking through your loss. You're processing your loss. Like, it's the questions that matter. The background helps because it lets you know you're not crazy. That the fact that you're angry at your husband is completely normal. Or the fact that you want to be completely alone. You don't want to be near anyone. You don't want to talk to anyone. You can't handle anyone else's emotions. These are all very normal things. So part of it is just normalizing what grief is because you don't know. But the other part of it then is kind of looking at your loss, looking at it from different angles, starting to understand it, starting to accept that it is real, that your loss really didn't happen. So whether, again, it's here or there are all sorts of workbooks that you can get on Amazon, but something that requires you to have some feedback, to actually respond to something, that helps you do that processing part of your loss. We did Give Me a Break as a section. This, if you've ever gone to counseling, these things are very common. These are like grounding exercises where it has you do things like feel the texture of a fabric and describe it. Describe a scent. All of these things bring you back to the moment. They bring you back to now, because now is where you're living. Now is where you can control. And it stops your brain from doing all the spiraling, because your brain is going to want to spiral. It's going to want to do all those if onlys. It's going to want to keep active to try to change what actually happened. So doing these Give Me a Break exercises gives you that ability to stop your brain, to have the break, to have that opportunity to just kind of relax. We've also done some mental exercises. These are if you like distractions instead of breathing. One of the ones is to take a pen and write your name backwards. And if you're good at writing your name backwards with your dominant hand, then switch to your non-dominant hand and try to write your name backwards. And the whole idea is it takes so much of your brain to do that, that all those other things that are happening in your brain stop happening, because your brain is fully focused on writing your name backwards with your non-dominant hand. So again, we're trying to give your brain the break and allow yourself to take that break. It's kind of funny, but there's just so much guilt with grief that if you have those moments when you feel good, when you're not thinking about your loss, you feel very guilty, because maybe it means you didn't love the person enough. Maybe it means you didn't care enough, that you're not heartbroken enough. It's this weird game we play with ourselves, or other people play with us. Like, other people's expectations when you're in grief are really hard to deal with. Go to the grocery store and they ask you how you're doing. It's the day after your husband died. What do you say? Do you say, I'm fine, and pretend like you're fine? Do you admit that your husband died yesterday and then have to face all of the questions that they're going to ask you if they know that your husband died, but you look like you're fine? What do they think about you and your husband? There's a lot of, almost to the point where you feel like you have to do a little bit of performative guilt when you are feeling good, because it doesn't meet other people's expectations of you. There's a lot of judgment. So we're trying to normalize the fact that it's okay and healthy to take breaks. Doesn't mean you didn't love them. It doesn't mean you don't miss them. It doesn't mean you wouldn't trade everything in the world to have them back again. But it does mean that it is healthy for you to have those breaks so that you can keep going, because you've got to keep going. And on that note, we then also added what we call good moments. And this can be done, again, however you want. I live in my travel van. And so this is my travel van as well. The whole idea is with the good moments is anytime, I'm having a hard time holding this and actually making it work at the same time. Every day we want you to look for one good moment, just one good moment. The sun is shining, You've got a cup of coffee that's good. The Seattle Seahawks won. This is one of my staff members' things that she did. Great lunch. Because even in the worst of times, there are these tiny little good moments. And if you make it a goal to recognize those, to stop and pause while that good moment is happening, it trains your brain to recognize the good moments and to stop and pause while they're happening and enjoy them. And again, this is all very healthy for you emotionally, because you have to move forward. And to move forward, you have to know that there's good in the future, that not all the good stuff is behind you, but there are good things for you in the future. And so recognizing these tiny moments of good when they happen, even if it's just you taking out your camera and just simply clicking it, training yourself, take out your camera, click it, take out your camera, click it. You start to have an album of positive things that have happened after your loss. And so it makes it easier to start to accept the fact that in the future, good things will happen, that it is not all bad in the future. The other thing that the app does is we designed it as a counterweight to the grief wave. So the grief wave hits you out of nowhere. You can't control when it's going to hit you. The only thing you can control is how you react when it hits you, right? You can control whether or not you're allowing yourself to feel those emotions, whether or not you're doing the grief wave breathing, but you can't control the grief wave hitting you actually. And so what we did with the good moments is once you get 4 photos loaded up, we send those to you randomly as notifications on your phone. And we call them happiness waves. And we ask you, when you receive that notification, we ask you to sit with that happy moment for 15 seconds and just relive the happiness of the moment. And again, that's training your brain to see that there is a future, that there are good things that can still happen and that will happen in the future. So all of these things are important for you to integrate your loss and move forward. And integrating your loss, I mean, it's a weird term. I don't know what the best word is for it, but essentially that is kind of your goal. Your goal is to be able to move forward in life. And to move forward in life, you have to live in reality. And living in reality means acknowledging your loss, acknowledging the fact that your loss isn't going to change, that it is still going to be a loss moving forward. Accepting, some people hate that term, especially parents who have lost children, because how could you accept the loss of your child, which I totally get. But I don't know a better word for it, but this is your new reality. How are you going to live in it, find joy in it, move forward in it? That loss will always be there. It will. It's a big enough loss that it caused grief. It's a big loss. It will always be there. Your goal is to build a life that encompasses it, but that is also bigger than that, so that there's more in your life than the loss that will always be there. So, and I guess one thing I didn't cover early on, and I should have covered it early on, is grief is caused by loss, not death. It's loss. It can be any kind of loss. It can be the loss of a marriage if you're divorced. Like, even if you're the one that filed for divorce, it's still a loss. You still lost that marriage. You lost that expectation of your future. It can be a physical loss, especially with seniors. The loss of mobility, the loss of the ability to drive a car. It is a loss. It can cause grief. Anyone that's been injured, that's lost a limb, that's lost the ability to do the sports that they used to do and love. Anyone that's in a career where they've lost their job or they've lost their status. All of these things are losses. And it's not up to you as to whether or not you feel grief. Your body, your soul determines whether or not you're going to feel grief from it. And so, again, the loss that happens to one person may affect them very differently than the loss that happens to another person. And death is a loss. But depending on the situation, it may not cause grief. For instance, if the person's been sick for 5 or 6 years and you have had all of that time to do what's called anticipatory grief, which is grief. It's grief as you slowly lose them, especially if there's something like Alzheimer's, where their personality is changing, where their memory is changing, where the parent that you had is no longer there anymore. You're in grief then. They don't have to die for you to go into grief. You're in grief as those losses occur. In my situation, I have a father that I haven't spoken to in 20 years. I have already grieved the loss of that relationship, the loss of what I had wanted from a father, the loss of the relationship that I'll never have. So when he actually dies, my guess is that I won't feel grief, because at that point in time, it's not a loss anymore. The loss was the loss of the relationship that I've already grieved through. So grief of loss of a pet, all of these things can cause grief. But again, it depends on how much you've processed it, what your personal situation is, as to whether or not you're actually going to feel grief at the moment. So kind of as a summary, grief is caused by a significant loss. You don't get to decide what it is. Your body, your soul, your mind decides what it is. And it's a whole bunch of emotions, and it's a whole bunch of physical reactions that are all messed up together. There is no timeline for grief. There's no time when you should be over it. It is individual for each person. But again, there are actions that you can take that help you process your grief. There is no guarantee that if you do all the little actions that are in the app, that you are going to feel better in X number of months. It is going to take the time it takes, but doing those steps helps you feel your emotions and integrate your loss. And with the emotions, it is really important that you feel them. And I didn't go over this in the moment, but they don't go away. The emotions are going to stay with you. And if you try to suppress them, if you try to not feel your emotions, it's like you trying to hold a beach ball under the water. And you can do it for a while. It's going to take a lot of your concentration. But the second you fall asleep or you get distracted or something else happens, that beach ball is going to come bursting out of the water. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with your emotions. You think you've suppressed them. You think you've got them all under control. They are all there. They're all swirling around. They are still present in you. And what's going to happen is you get into traffic and suddenly there's a traffic jam and you're screaming at the cars around you because all of that anger that you've been suppressing is suddenly has an outlet. It's suddenly coming out. Or your child wants to go to see a friend overnight for a sleepover, or they want to go to the playground, and suddenly all that anxiety and fear that you've been suppressing comes up, and you're not going to let your child do it, or you're going to be really hesitant, or you're going to kind of helicopter over them, like that anxiety you have not addressed, and so it's going to come out when your child asks to do something. Or you go to your favorite restaurant and they're out of your favorite menu item, and suddenly you're in tears because that food that you wanted isn't there. You're out of control. Your grief is out of control. Your life is out of control. And now your lunch is out of control and you're going to start crying all over the place. So you can try not to feel your emotions, but it's not healthy. So again, that timer, even if in the moment you can't feel it because you've got 10 little kids around you, you're a teacher, you're in the middle of a work meeting and you can't feel it, you still need to take time to feel it. So if you can't feel it in the moment, what some people have done is they've taken the timer, even just a kitchen timer, and they've gone into their basement or their bedroom after work when they have that space and time to feel their emotions. And they set the timer for 10 minutes. And during that 10 minutes, they allow themselves to feel their emotions. But you have to allow those emotions to happen. They are there. Your heart needs to process them. It's not going to help you to suppress them. If you do, there's all sorts of chances that you'll use alcohol or drugs or sugar or TV to numb yourself. And all of those can lead to their own issues. So instead of building up with all these other problems, just try to find some way to allow yourself to feel your emotions. The other thing is you've got to process it. So you've got to put things into words, whether it's written or spoken, telling stories, talking to a friend, journaling. The more you talk about it, the more you have to make sense of it, the more your brain can start to integrate your loss. And so talk about it, write about it, get it out there, tell the story when you feel safe, when you feel like you're with someone that you're safe. And then finally, allow yourself to feel joy. It is okay. It is totally, totally okay. And in fact, healthy to feel grief and joy at the same time. When I was taking my husband's ashes to Oregon to bury him next to his father, my sister came with me, and she had only once been on the Oregon coast back when we were, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. And so we ended up making a trip out of it because we were at the coast. Here we were right there. And I just remember really enjoying it and really feeling horrible that I was enjoying it. Because what type of a wife was I if I was taking my husband's ashes and enjoying the beach? But it is good. It is healthy. Your brain needs it. You just need that reset. You need that pause. You need that other set of emotions. It is okay and healthy to feel those emotions. So those are all of my suggestions when you're in grief. Again, do the grief app, don't do the grief app, but try to use these techniques to help yourself process your grief.
Thank you so much, Saundra. I think that you have given, our attendees and those who have registered for this webinar so many helpful tips and things to consider. I also really loved how you highlighted each of the features in the Grief app. I just really love, in particular, that part of what you mentioned about, helping people to focus on the good times. Because I think a lot of times when we are going through a loss, all we see is that loss, all we feel is that loss, right? So remembering that there's something waiting for us that's good, and you can find a little bit of happiness each and every day. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing right now. Um, so as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, we are now moving into our Q&A. Oh, you have a comment from Kathleen. She says, "Thanks so much for the info. Love that you're in a camper van."
Yes. And I actually did buy this after my husband's death. I'd wanted one since I was 18. Uh, you know, life happens. I married at 40, 42, and my husband and I had gone back and forth on the camper van, and he didn't want to make the investment. So after his death, I I bought it, and I spent a year in the house because that's the general piece of advice is to spend a year before making any big financial decisions. So I did, and I'm glad I did because you kind of want to avoid those grief waves. Like they aren't fun. They aren't fun. They're exhausting. They're often and when you're in a place with a lot of memories, they really hit you. And so I think there's a knee jerk reaction early on to want to be somewhere else so that you reduce the number of grief waves that you feel. So I really wanted to sell the house and live in the camper van full time right away, but I did wait the year. And I'm glad I did because I still made the same decision. But when I made it knowing that that was a future I wanted as opposed to just wanting to avoid all of the grief waves.
I love that approach. I have a friend that she ended up moving abroad after dealing with a very deep personal loss, and I find that that's becoming more common these days as people sort of moving away from that area where they've associated that grief and that pain and
Yeah.
moving on to somewhere else.
And it can be good or it can be bad, but again, do it thoughtfully.
Right.
Because once you sell a house, you can't go back and buy the house again.
True, true.
um, but yeah, so I bought the van and I've been full time in it now for a year and a half. So I like
Kathleen says you're living your best life. So,
it. I hope so. I, I would trade it all if I could get Eric back again, but there's nothing I can do to get Eric back again. No sacrifice that I can make that would bring him back to me. So that was a realization I had was his story is written and I need to make sure that I'm writing my story moving forward.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Nancy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't turn my camera on because honestly, there's so many different ways to get on Zoom. You know, do you want to use the app? Do you want to use the browser? And I'm going like, oh my God, and then it starts talking about multiple cameras. And I'm going like, I'll turn the camera on when I get in there, but I can't. So anyway, um, this was a terrific presentation. Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
think you just covered a lot of useful information, and it was very well organized and easy to follow. So I want to thank you. I'm almost 83 years old. And the reason I mention that is because when I first got interested in end of life stuff, it was the mid 70s. You remember the 1970s? Well,
Yes,
anyway, I
I
do.
do.
Um,
I was very
and,
young back then, but yes.
and I went to a 5-day workshop with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross
Okay.
called Life and Death Transitions. And I just want to add a little information here. And of course, I read her book, Death and Dying, and then there was a follow-up book and just all kinds of books. When she came out with those 5 stages, the focus originally was on the patient
Yes.
who received the terminal diagnosis. And then somehow, over a period of time, that model got transferred to the griever
Yeah.
of the person who got the diagnosis. So initially, um, it was pretty accurate, but she was very open-minded, and I think she would have enhanced even just the emotional experience of the person saying, "Oh, it's time to go into hospice," or whatever. But I just wanted to add that little crumblet of information.
Yeah. And I've met her son. He now runs the Kubler-Ross
Yeah,
Foundation.
I
And
know.
he is trying to break that zeitgeist understanding. I don't know. It's gotten somehow into the common knowledge, and we just can't break it.
I know. I
And he
know.
showed me some of her work where she actually had like 9 different things that you went through. So,
Oh,
he's
okay.
even saying, look, it was 9. The author kind of condensed it,
Yeah,
not the author, but the editor kind of condensed it down to 5. So he's really
yeah,
trying to work to break that idea too. But you're right. She totally did research on the dying, not on the bereaved. And so even
yeah.
that we get wrong in society.
She was an interesting person to be around. I don't know. Did you know that she's like she was 4 feet 10?
I did not know that she was that
Yeah,
short. No.
yeah, yeah. 4 feet 10, one of triplets. Did
Oh,
you know? Yeah, she was a triplet, and she always wore Birkenstocks. I don't
I
know
can
if
see that.
younger people know about Birkenstocks, and she smoked Benson and Hedges cigarettes.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
She was a real person. She was a delight to know.
I'm so glad you got that chance to go to her training.
Yes, it was really special. Thank you.
Has that helped you throughout the years with that knowledge?
Um, well, I'm not a moderate person. So when I have an interest, I just leap in. And I did not have a family that I had to tend to or children that needed my time and attention and stuff. And so um, being on my own, I could devote as much time to all of that as as I wanted to. And it was interesting, but actually, I went to a wide array. I was out in the Bay Area at the time in the 70s. There was just stuff. I mean, there was stuff. And even like through University of California, Berkeley remote classes, they offered a 5-day retreat at a Buddhist monastery in the foothills of Mount Shasta. Can you believe that? So I went up to that thing, and that was really interesting. And there was a guy named Charlie Garfield at the time who did specialized training on cancer people that had cancer and so forth. But I don't know, Elizabeth kind of took a liking to me. We did this exercise during the 5 days where telephone books, telephone books, yellow pages, right? So she had these big, thick yellow pages, and so we all sat in a circle, and we took turns going into the center with and we were supposed to tear up books of yellow pages.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and they were very thick and stuff. So I really got into it, uh, and started jumping up and down and ripping and tearing and cursing and all kinds of stuff. And when I finally stopped to catch my breath, she's just standing over to the side in her Birkenstocks, and she says, and she was from Switzerland, right? So she had an accent. She says, I see you are a rebel like me.
I have two grief therapists on my team, and one of the grief therapists in the year that we've been working together has lost 7 people. I mean, it's amazing. She's lost a nephew, she's lost a father-in-law, she's lost her boss. She's lost
That's
her
a
next
lot.
door neighbor. And so I asked her, I was like, does understanding grief make it any easier? And she's like, it's weird because she understands what she's going through, but it doesn't stop her from going through it. So again,
Right,
your mind and your soul just need to do it all. So she
right.
finds herself going through all of this, like understanding it doesn't prevent her from needing to just
That's right.
experience it. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Any additional questions or comments or anything for Saundra? Going once, going twice. All righty. So we have recorded this session. Usually it takes us a few days to edit it and get it processed. So we will send out a link to the recording to everyone who has attended and also to those who have registered. In that email, we will also include the access code that Saundra very graciously provided to everyone so that you can check out the app for 1 month free and really get to dive in and experience all of the wonderful features that is available on the Grief app. And Saundra, do you want to include your contact info here, or should I send that along when I send along the recording?
Yeah, no, everyone can reach me. I'm Saundra, SAUNDRA, at thegriefApp.com, or you can email weunderstand@thegriefApp.com, and I'm happy to reply, answer any questions. Again, I'm not a therapist, so don't ask me therapist questions, but I'm happy to help however I can.
Thank you so much, Saundra. It's been a pleasure having you this evening, and we will see you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
I'm clapping.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, good night, everyone.
Good night.